and this doesn't mean like everyone on leftist Twitter is like this, but this is like something I see a lot. Is that there, you have to hold certain views about certain philosophies. Like you have to inherently seek to destroy capitalism, for example, which like for a lot of people entering leftist spheres is not their thing. Um, and I'm talking about people who are really just coming into leftist politics. Um, because most people who are, if you're coming from the right into the left, you're probably not thinking, let's destroy capitalism. You're probably not searching for the philosophy that helps you destroy capitalism. And quite frankly, that's not even why I'm here. Because, I don't care about this whole socialism versus capitalism debate. I think it's genuinely a waste of time to be like spending so much effort talking about that and making it like the entirety of your political like understanding and discussion. There's so much more. Like I care about policy. I don't care. Like the ideology isn't what drives me. It's the policy. It's always been the policy. So like for me, what helped me end up in the type of leftist position that I am is I wanted to support policies that I thought would help people and would help create more freedom for everyone. And so naturally, if I'm trying to find more freedom for everyone, that will bring you to like civil libertarian ideas. That'll bring you to things that like are exist in social democracy. That'll so like some more specific some specific policies that might lead you to are things like Medicare for all, because if your healthcare is dependent on having a job and you staying at that job, that means you can't leave that job if you want to keep healthcare. Therefore, you have less freedom. And I want more people to have freedom. Also, Medicare for all makes it pretty expensive to deal with your not having Medicare for all makes it really expensive to deal with medical bills. Like it's like a big stressor for everyone. Like a few years ago, um, my mom had a stroke, and it was very stressful. And she's okay now. She's actually doing really well now, and I'm very happy about that. Um, but like I didn't see her the night that it happened because I was out doing something, and then I came home, and I noticed the house was oddly empty, but I didn't think much of it. Um, so I just like kind of went to my computer and just started doing stuff, and then I got a text from my brother briefly explaining the situation, and I was like, "Oh shit!" And they had already gone to the hospital, taken her to the emergency room and stuff, and they were already like working on her. But I didn't see her till the next day, so I was just sitting with this like complete state of uncertainty because I have no idea what she looked like or sounded like. I had no idea. All I but like this was terrifying. Though there was this really interesting moment that happened um, after like 15 minutes of just like freaking out about the situation, or I I had this thought just enter my mind, and it was just like you can't do anything about the situation. Like if you want to help the situation, the most you could do right now is to keep yourself from freaking out too much. So just calm the hell down. And like there became to be like this weird sense of calm about myself. And so I just focused on just trying to de-stress. Like I got in my Discord chat and told my friends like about the situation and just said, "Hey, I don't want to DM D&D tonight because we were like also scheduled to like do D&D, and so I was going to do that." And I was like, "Yeah, we're not going to do that. I don't that's going to be too stressful. I don't want to deal with that." because here's the situation. And we just like tried to just like have a chill, comfortable time, making jokes, sharing memes and stuff, because I was just trying to relax. So the next day, um, when we went in to see her, um, I still I had no sense of like what to expect when we walked into the ICU. And we walked in, went into the room that she was in, and she was just laying in the bed, and she was like, "Hey, kind of like that, like almost like like lazily spoken, but like you know." And we were there for like I don't know, somewhere between half an hour and an hour. I don't even know how long. But we were there for a bit. We talked and stuff. Learned about the situation. Um, and basically, as soon as concerns over her like mortality were alleviated, the very next concern was money. And that's not okay. That really should not be that close to the top. Like it was so immediate. Like as soon as like I was relieved of the idea that she might die from this, because there were indicators that like we had gotten her to the emergency room in time, they had stopped the worst of it, and now we take the path to recovery. The immediate thought was, can we pay for the medical bills? Will our insurance cover that? And we weren't like like my mom didn't want to like worry herself with that, which like I guess is understandable. Maybe if you're the one recovering, you don't want to worry about that shit because like the whole like you need to focus on you. But like that's that's where my immediate concern was, and I'm not even like a money focused person or anything, and so I don't. Our situation went pretty well, all things considered. Like we were able to pay for the medical bills. Our insurance did cover a decent chunk of it, if not all of it. And she was able to recover. It wasn't a huge burden for us. We didn't end up with a massive pile of medical debt. But that's not the case for everyone. In fact, a lot of people will have it way worse. Some people will go through way worse situations through no fault of their own and have to pay much higher medical bills and have really shitty insurance companies that don't want to pay the insurance and will do everything they can to avoid paying. And they like get into this like battle with the hospitals and pharmaceutical companies and I'm sure my dad would be able to have a much better rant about that than I could because he's a doctor. He actually sees that shit. Um, and he hates it. um, but the point being that I was stressed out about this, and we're comparatively lucky. Many people have it worse. Medical debt is the number one source of debt in this country, or number one cause of bankruptcy. I mean, I think it's also the number one source of debt, but like it's like the biggest cause of bankruptcy, and that only happens here. That's ridiculous. In almost every other country, or every other developed country, I should say, in the world, um, they have universal health care of some sort. So money isn't going to be that big of a concern. There isn't this concern about whether or not you're going to be covered. You just actually focus on like the actual healthcare part of it because it's healthcare, not wealth care. But anyway, so that's one of the major policies that I think is a big deal in terms of like giving more people freedom everywhere. Another one that is really big for me, maybe even bigger, is a universal basic income. Let me take another sip. Because universal basic income is huge. It's a huge deal. If like, let's take what the only presidential candidate who was like up front and center about UBI was Andrew Yang. So I'll use him as an example. Though his UBI is not the only UBI that exists, and there are better UBIs that you could have. But if we just take his example of $1,000, um, what do they call it, freedom dividend, um, every month, that's to every American 18 and up, basically everyone of voting age, or just everyone who's an adult. That's that would do a lot to help make sure that people aren't as stressed out because they would have much more. They would have. They would. There wouldn't be this constant concern about whether or not they could pay for like just things in general. Um, and it's not necessarily something that's going to cover like a medical emergency, for example, because a lot of medical emergencies will easily exceed $1,000 because they're usually several $1,000s. And even if you take the entire, some medical bills will exceed $12,000, which is a year's worth of freedom dividend. Um, and by the way, I think it's worth noting that even Andrew Yang has said that he thinks that his UBI proposal maybe should have been higher. I think he said that in like one of his podcasts in like May or June of last year. So like well after he had dropped out. Um, but and also after COVID happened, because yeah, like people didn't really take UBI too seriously um, when Yang was running, but ever like for almost a year now, stimulus checks has been like one of the number one things talked about in American politics. So like I don't know, man. I think he was kind of onto something there. Um, and I know maybe they're I know a lot of Bernie people don't like hearing that because like it almost sounds like I'm like kind of dissing Bernie, and to some extent I am because I think Bernie should have adopted UBI into his presidential campaign. I'm kind of flabbergasted he didn't because I love Bernie. Bernie's wonderful. Um, that's why I just talked about why universal healthcare is so important, and his number one thing was in his presidential campaign was Medicare for all. So obviously, I like Bernie, and I voted for him in the primary, by the way. Um, Even though it was already by the time I vote, because like our primary was March 17th last year, so that was like 2 weeks after Super Tuesday, which was such a devastating day if you were a Bernie supporter, because oh that's that sucked, man. Honestly, like it just thinking about 2020, it's like the last good day of 2020 was the day of the Nevada caucus because that like Bernie won the first three like races in the primary in a row. No one's ever done that before in the contested primary. At least no one's ever done that before and not gone on to win the presidency. Like it's just so it's crazy that he didn't end up especially considering the freaking policies he was running on.